Hello everyone, welcome to this month's VRHP webinar. We are so glad you have taken a few moments out of your day to join us and to hear some great nuggets of information from Natalee Pfeiffer. Just a couple of things to keep in mind about VRHP as we have our national conference coming up October 28th, 29th, and 30th. This year we are combining with the Vacation Rental Managers Association. So this is a first-time collaboration between the two associations, and it's the first time that you'll have a one-stop shop for all things vacation rentals, front of the house, back of the house. We've been working on the agenda for quite some time, and I am super excited about what's laid out for the attendees. Also want to make sure that you know that at the end of this webinar, we will be posting it on our YouTube channel. That way, if you've missed it, you can see it there. And you also have our past webinars as well as other training material on our YouTube channel there for the vacation rental housekeeping professionals. Also on the right-hand side, there's a GoToWebinar control panel, and there's a little area where you can type in questions. I will be monitoring that throughout the day as Natalee presents. So if you have questions, you can certainly type them in there, and we will address them as we go through the webinar. Without further ado, we'll turn it over to Natalee Pfeiffer, who is in the great state of Florida, down there soaking up all the sun and humidity, and just enjoying a great July down there. Natalee, thanks so much for being with us, and we look forward to hearing about your experiences when you were in the Outer Banks of North Carolina and managing people with all sorts of diverse personalities.
Thank you, Dirk. It's always a pleasure to join in on these. So yeah, you hit the nail on the head about how hot it is here, because you know you walk outside and it just feels like you're in a sauna. So, so sometimes it feels that way when you're managing a whole bunch of different people. You know, you don't know how to treat each individual person. It's a big task. It's a huge challenge when you have a whole bunch of different personalities trying to work together. And that's what we're talking about today. So we're going to be talking about managing diverse personalities. And the success of a team lies in working together. As all of you know, there are many cogs and wheels at work in a property service department. All functions must be well oiled in order to complete the many tasks that make up our day. And there are many. It's the responsibility of the manager to make sure that their staff are utilized to their full potential. Our topic today is not about our team and the individuals who make up that team. This would be a very long webinar if we did. This is about managing in general, and this is about you as a manager. A general notion is that a manager must be adept at taking care of projects, the goals and requirements of the company that are being met, overseeing the day-to-day, that you have all of your materials in place, your inventory is fully stocked, etc., etc., etc. Yet this is not the most important aspect of your role. It's your people management. That is the most important aspect of your role as a manager. If you are not good with the people that you are managing, you cannot expect them to give the same for you. It's your team. It's the people who make up your team. The scenario is summed up in a beautiful quote by W. Edwards Deming. He's an American engineer, a statistician, a professor, an author, a lecturer, and a management consultant. Now keep in mind, his heyday was back in the early 1900s, so I'm gonna modernize this quote a little bit. A manager of people needs to understand that all people are different. This is not ranking people. He or she needs to understand that the performance of anyone is governed largely by the system that he or she works in. This is the responsibility of management. There are three basic types of managers that I will go over today. So there are many lists of many different types of managers. I'm touching on three basic ones today. The first type are the ones who focus on projects more than people. They know the ins and outs of the day-to-day, the long-term goals of their respective departments, and are hyper-focused on meeting those goals. They tend to be the best resource in their own team because they are afraid to delegate tasks. They get the work done, yet they're unable to take their team to the next level. Why is that? It's because they don't know how to bring the best out of their resources, their staff. This is because they fail to understand about different personality types in their team. The second type are the ones who focus on people over projects. They know everyone's business and are commonly sought out to chit-chat with, even if it's outside of the workplace. They struggle in delivering relevant, constructive criticism because they can be a little too close with their staff. This can tend to cause issues among the team and is too easily thought of as playing favorite. They frequently struggle in moving the bar when it comes to meeting goals within their respective departments. The third type of manager are capable of focusing on projects and people. They know exactly who the vital members of the team are, yet they treat every team member as equally important. They know how to leverage the strengths of their team because they understand them as a person and understand the different types of personalities in their team to create not just the winning team, but a team that can thrive in the most adverse conditions. And you and I all know there are many of those in our day-to-day, especially this time of year.
Yes, there
in
are.
My own career,
Yes, there are.
In my own career, I would flip-flop between every management type. I was a type 1 manager for a really long time. I focused on projects over people. I have no shame in admitting that. But as I grew as a manager, I learned how to flip-flop in between each type. I learned how to flip that meter on and off. And isn't that what we need to do in this industry? We are the wearer of many hats after all, and understanding the certain climate and the certain atmosphere of a situation and learning what type of manager we need to be, that's the answer. We need to be able to be all three types. So even if you aren't an exact replica of a type 3 manager, as long as you don't personify type 1 and type 2 to an extreme level, you are capable of having a winning team and making sure your goals are met.
So Natalee, quick question for you then on the 3 different types.
Sure.
How did you learn to go from a type 1 to what you felt was a productive manager? Can you tell us a little bit about how that took place and what you went through, just in a nutshell there?
Sure. So when I first started, my management type would change depending on the type of day, or the day of the week, if you will. So Monday through Friday, I was in project mode because I knew Saturdays and Sundays were the big rollover days. So those days were, the days that I needed to be the people manager, and I needed to make sure that, everybody was greeted with a smile and that they were off to do their tasks, happy and, ready to take on the world. Now, Monday through Friday, that was my busy time. That's when I needed to make sure that we met all of our goals over the weekend, that we're on track to be ready for the next weekend. And I started there, and it grew into understanding, that I also have to make sure that our goals are being met during the weekend, and I also have to make sure that my team is happy during the week. So it was just a matter of practice, and there were some fails. I had several fails, but that's okay because through failure, you learn. You learn how to be better. So trial and error and figuring out what works best.
Were there any books or any classes you attended that helped you make that transition and become the manager that you wanted to become?
I think so. I attended many VRMA and VRHP conferences, and I got a lot of really good insight there, especially at the roundtable. And then I also read, oh my goodness, I've read a lot of books about management work.
Okay. I just didn't
I
know if
can't
one or
think
two
of
stuck
one,
out
but
to you at the moment, or if there was that way, because I know some, we all want to strive to be better managers, and education and self-learning and self-refinement is the key. And I do think that failing, as much as I hate to admit it, and as much as many others may hate to admit it, that's part of the learning process, is being able to accept our failures for what they are and know that we can
yeah,
improve and then move better. Because I mean, that's a tremendous learning opportunity we've been given in that failure
yeah,
to then move forward and to be better.
absolutely. And I also always took constructive criticism seriously. I always looked to my superiors and took the advice of those who have been in the game, if you will, much longer than I have. I always kept myself open to, ask somebody some questions or take on a new mentor,
Okay.
for sure. All right. So here are some Here are 4 tips: assess first and then process, perspire to inspire, praise in public, criticize in private, and lay a solid foundation. The first tip: assess first and then process. Whenever I've been given the charge to manage a team, the first thing I always did was invest time in getting to know the team and allow them time to discuss any friction points or suggestions, passing the mic, if you will. I also made time to find out the following. What kind of experience does the person have? What is their background? What are their expectations of this role, of this team? And what are the expectations of themselves? That last question always sparked really good conversation. Knowing all of these things can help you become a better judge of how to best utilize their strengths and be cognizant of their weaknesses.
So then, Natalee, before you go on to your next slide there, as you start to
Sure.
meet your staff and make these questions, did you write these down in a notebook? Did you have these in a computer where it was easy to find, so you didn't have to remember this all the time? How did you remember this great information and detail that you picked up about your staff?
Sure. So I always had a list of about 20 questions that I would ask everyone in the interview room. And depending on how the conversation went, I would refer to a particular question. And one of my favorite questions that I asked was, if you had to pick one spirit animal, what would it be and why? And I liked that question because it always took them by surprise. Every single time, and it always sparked a really cool conversation. Even if it was a little silly, it helped break down some barriers so that you could find a little bit more out about a person. And that was really important to me. So that was my favorite question.
Sweet. And then did you keep these in a notebook, or did you have a CRM, an employee CRM of sorts, to remember all this detail that you picked up, or how did you keep track of that?
So yeah, I have always kept a handy dandy notebook, if you will.
Yeah.
I actually have several. I have several.
Okay.
But when I was in hiring mode, I always had the same set of questions. I always had the same packet of paperwork that they needed to fill out. And I just tried to keep it standard so that, I was touching all key points to, every new hire, but I was also getting to know them at the same time.
Okay.
And then I just, I have a whole bunch of notebooks to keep track of everything that has worked for me in the past.
Sweet. Thank you.
For sure. Of course. Okay, so perspire to inspire. I'm sure all of you are well accustomed to this, I hope. No matter how smart we are, how much we keep our budgets in mind, there's no replacement for hard work. And when it comes to getting the team together and managing different personality styles, you need to do a lot of sweating. It's so important for a manager to understand the different personality types in a team, but it's equally important for team members also to understand their manager is pitching in and isn't afraid to get dirty right along with them. As a manager, you need to play to strengths of the team, keep them in a position where they can contribute towards the success of the company, of their personal growth, and equally important, that our guests are going to have a wonderful stay with our company. Praise in public, criticize in private. Do your best to adopt this mantra. Praise in public, criticize in private. This should be a no-brainer. No one wins and feelings are hurt when you criticize in public. If there's a repetitive issue that occurs among your team, then address it as a group in a professional yet serious manner. You can go over why this is not representative of our brand, and here are the reasons why. For an example, please, people do not respond well to criticism without compliments. It creates an uncomfortable environment and welcomes a defensive response, which usually does not make the conversation end well. Okay, so you also need a solid foundation: freedom, flexibility, and trust. And I'll go over why I have these three. Freedom. Empower your staff to make decisions on their own. They actually appreciate this freedom, and the delegation of allowing your staff to make these decisions frees up your time as well. Let them know that they'll never be chastised for doing what they think is right. You may have cause to correct the way a situation could have been handled better in the future, but they should not be punished for trying to do the right thing. With flexibility, this can be a hairy word during the high heat and pressure surrounding peak season. We don't have much room for flexibility, but we can be understanding, and that in and of itself is flexibility. Understanding that our teammates have real lives outside of the circus of a busy housekeeping, maintenance, or laundry department is crucial. The work must be done, but the people behind the work must also be capable of doing the work without distraction. Set your limits and stick to them, and be fair. Trust is the big one. Do what you say you will do. You can't expect your team to adhere to this if you aren't practicing yourself. Refer to accomplishments as a team, a whole, not just yourself. There are many cogs and wheels at work in a property service department. Trust that all functions are working properly, together, in beautiful unison, and it all boils down to trust. So that is my presentation. Is there any questions?
Yeah, there are. There are a couple of questions. So how would you go about building trust with your staff?
So how I would go about building trust with my staff is I would take the time first to get to know them a little bit better, make sure that they see me out on, in the ground, sweating right along with them, checking in on them, making sure, if they have any questions, and just doing that repeatedly and consistently. And over time, the trust grows more and more as you get to know each other as people, not just as a role title.
Okay. And then did you make an effort to meet with your staff on a one-on-one basis during the season, every week, every month, or anything of that nature?
So yes, there were times where I did this. Unfortunately, on the Outer Banks, there is many of the staff come from sometimes hours away. So we didn't really get that time, the one-on-one, like during the middle of the week when it would be a realistic expectation to have a one-on-one with every single person. I always made time to have the one-on-one in the beginning. I handled the training myself. I would pass, sometimes I might need to pass off the in-the-house training or maybe the introductory training, but I would always make a point to have a one-on-one with the person. And then I would always try to make a point to see someone, out in the field or check in on them if an inspector is noticing something that might be going wrong. It's hard to make an opportunity to sit down with every single person, especially if you're managing over 400 properties in your portfolio. But doing the best that you can and making sure they at least see you once a day is very important every single week.
Yeah, agreed.
Mm-hmm.
What about how would you train your inspectors or supervisors to be a good manager to stop and talk to people as they went throughout the day?
Okay, sure. That's a great question. So we always made sure that inspectors went through the exact same training that cleaners did. That way, our cleaners could see that our inspectors were getting the exact same training, so there wouldn't be that, as much friction as there would be if we did not. Now, the training would just consist of an additional series, going over. I actually have a training the trainer series, and it would just be an additional, 20 to 30 minutes with the inspectors, or owner services in some cases. We had a mix of inspectors and owner service reps that would go out as well. So they would just have a little bit more one-on-one training, and they would be paired with an owner services rep, or an owner services would have an inspector to go along with them for any additional questions. So we tried to team them up.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
For someone who was looking to become a better manager, whether they've been a manager for 6 months or for 15, 20 years, what are some things you think would be good for someone to do?
So I highly recommend going to as many industry shows as you can. Sometimes it's not really a realistic expectation for every single company. So if that's the case, I would highly recommend starting to reach out to others that maybe hold the same title as you do in the industry, and starting a conversation. I knew at least one or two people in almost every company that, was a direct competitor of ours in the area. And we just had this agreement that, we can't do this by ourselves. We need to have somebody to, knock around ideas with. So I actually found a lot of use in, starting a little bit of a meeting of the minds, if you will, of local either operation managers or housekeeping managers, and we would just chat with each other if we had a question. It was really helpful. And VRHP has an online forum where you can ask these same questions. And I've used that in the past as well, and was overwhelmed by the response. It was really nice.
Sweet. That's true. We are a tight community that way. I do agree.
Yeah.
Well, excellent.
Sure.
This concludes our webinar for today. Natalee, thank you so much for taking the time out to share your expertise with us. We appreciate you as attendees being able to participate with us today. This session was recorded and will be available on the VRHP YouTube channel the next day or so. In the meantime, we wish you the best of luck doing your back of the house operations, and thank you for attending. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.